All right, I think we'll go ahead and get started. Might have a couple late arrivals, that's all right. For those of you that don't know me, which I think is like one or two people that are here, everybody that's here I think is here to get extra credit in one of my classes, but that's all right. I'm Steve Higgins. I teach the class on comics that we have here at the school, Lewis and Clark, Comic Books as Literature. And if you're not in my class and you have a slight interest or an incredible interest in comics, I definitely urge you to take it. Next spring, I teach it every spring. It'll be offered, and you'll see signs because I'll hang around campus. And I am hosting this guest lecture today with three esteemed comics creators. We're very lucky to have them here. And I think I'm just going to, if you guys don't mind, I'm just going to ask you to each introduce yourselves, starting with Matt, since you want to.
Okay. I'm Matt Kindt. I'm the writer-artist of Pistol Whip, The Yellow Menace, Two Sisters, and then Super Spies, Men in This Book.
I'm Brian Hurtt. I am an artist. I work with Cullen on a book called The Damned. I've done other works, a book for DC called Hard Time, and I've done several projects with Oni Press, Queen and Country Declassified, Skinwalker, and Three Strikes.
And I'm Cullen Bunn. I'm a writer, written a lot of prose, short stories, and things like that, and got into comics a few years back. As Brian said, I've done The Damned with Brian, and then I've got a bunch of upcoming books. I've got a book with Matt coming up called The Tooth, and I've got some unannounced projects with Wildstorm and Marvel that should be coming out hopefully in the next year.
And to work with me.
I did. Oh, well, yeah. Brian and I are working on another unannounced project. I was just keep that one secret, but thanks, Brian. If I divulge any other secrets,
Mystery's good.
Rich Johnston is never going to find out about this, so you can feel free to diss as many people as you want, or announce whatever projects that you might like to. All right, so I think it would be good to start off, since I'm guessing most of the students that are here today do have a slight interest in comics, at the very least, I hope. And I think it might be good to start off talking about what training you guys have had, if any. It doesn't necessarily have to be formal training, but how did you get into this? What classes did you take along the way, if you took any? And how did you learn your craft, I guess? And again, I'll start with Matt down on the end.
Okay. I graduated from Webster University in '95, and I got a BA in graphic design, or art with an emphasis in graphic design. And then when I was in school, I took a bunch of just as many art classes as I could: figure drawing, painting, drawing, sculpture, paper making, and then they had like 2 design classes. So with those 2 design classes, I took all of those, and then tried to get a job out of school as a designer, which is a lot easier than trying to get some sort of fine art job. I don't know what those would be. But then the whole time, the whole time, my little secret dream was to do comics for a living. But I knew that, especially my art at the time and where I was, I wasn't ready for it. So I did a bunch of mini comics in my spare time after work. I got a design job, and did a bunch of mini comics until my first book, Pistol Whip, came out, changing with other classes. Other than that, I just read comics since I was a kid, you know. I mean, I grew up reading them, and I was kind of all that stuff just soaked into me, you know, how comics work. So I never really took any comic classes or anything.
Well, very few of those existed, and really even today, very few exist.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I didn't have the opportunity to take any classes directed towards comics. The only formal training I took was community college fine art classes for a couple of years. But I pretty much know when to draw comics since I was 8 or 9, and so I was always working towards that. I really didn't get motivated until my mid-20s, and that's when I took time off and I developed my first job, but I wasn't prepared to be in comics when I got my first job. It still took me a couple more years to really find my feet. But yeah, it's kind of a trial by fire.
All right.
And I, read a lot of comic books growing up. Watched a lot of really bad movies, and
Still watch.
I always knew I wanted to tell stories. And I think when I was in 7th or 8th grade, I put together some mini comics that are. I wanted to be an artist as well, and I was just really dreadful.
Did you
really terrible
bring any of
artist.
those?
I did not bring them.
I've seen
still
them.
have
They're
them.
wonderful.
Yeah. I was really a dreadful artist.
Give me a title.
There was Matter Man, because he could control matter.
Or was it X?
And the X Laser Knights. Shut up. So I was not a very good.
That's a classic.
I was actually doing an X Laser Knight comic when I was about 4th or 5th grade, and none of those existed. But I decided I still wanted to tell stories, and I kind of turned more towards prose. And I have a Bachelor of Arts in creative writing, and I kind of moved that into a job in marketing that I've been doing for about 12 years now. But I've still been writing on the side. Just I guess a few years ago, really started getting some comics published. So. And I just still read a lot of comics and books and watch bad movies still.
Well, no, I think that's good that you guys kind of talked about how, with comics especially, that there's not as much formal training out there for it, and really the best way to learn is by doing it, by reading a lot and by practicing and screwing up and then getting better at it. So since you all mentioned, reading a lot of comics growing up, what kind of comics did you read, or what kinds of things did you read? What kind of art did you admire? What kind of stories influenced you as you were in your formative years? We'll start with you.
I used to buy my comics out of a grocery bag off the back of a pickup truck. A big random grocery bag full of comics that is like just every random kind of book you could read.
Was this legal?
Yeah, it's legal. But for $5, you'd get a big bag of 50 to 100 comic books, and I read every one of them. So it was a range from everything from horror comics to kung fu comics to superhero books. And those are still probably my favorite types of stories. And I don't necessarily read as much of that anymore. I read more of I'm leaning more towards the crime and the horror books now. But those are still the books that are probably near and dear to my heart.
Yeah, I got, I'm like most kids, I picked up Spider-Man from the grocery store, but I really got into comics through the flea market. And like a lot of people my age, the G.I. Joe, back in the 80s, G.I. Joe was a really big comic book. That was my first comic book I looked for every month, picked every month, and then I started reading mainly superhero books, a lot of Marvel superhero books, like Chris Claremont, X-Men.
Yeah,
really shaped.
Yeah, my dad and I used to play X-Men comics together. I paid for, and I sold all of them because I paid for 2 years of college selling X-Men comics that my dad and I collected. I wish I still had them.
Oh, I got subscriptions. We lived in the middle of nowhere, so our local store just had like this little spinner rack.
Yeah.
But I remember crying because my brother had Dazzler #1, and
This is 3 weeks ago.
it had a subscription form in it, and I wanted a subscription, and I just cried until my mom made him cut it out, and then mailed it in. So that's how I got my first comics.
Right.
I feel bad. I bought him a new #1 as an adult.
Yeah, I used to get a lot of comics at Stuckey's when we were on road trips. You could buy these 3-packs of comic books.
Oh yeah. I would get those at at Woolworths or Kmart or something, and they would have.
Yeah.
It would be like on the front is like a G.I. Joe, and then on the back is like 2 crappy comics you never even heard
always
of.
trying to see the middle.
What's in there?
We were going to Georgia, and there was an issue of Micronauts in there, and I read that issue, and I think I bugged my parents to stop at every Stuckey's for the next 400 miles because I was hoping to get another issue of Micronauts.
And are you still a big Micronauts fan?
My favorite comic ever. It's awesome.